Jerusalem has been called the most controversial piece of real estate on earth. Jerusalem is widely recognized as a city holy to three world religions. The media consistently refers to it as the holiest site in Judaism and the third holiest site in Islam. It is also home to important Christian sites like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Via Dolorosa, and the Mount of Olives. But it has never been essential to Christian theology that Jerusalem be ruled by a Christian power. The primary justification for the Crusades was to reopen the holy sites to Christian pilgrims who had been barred by the Muslim occupation of the city, not to permanently conquer land. Furthermore, in the 21st century, Christians make up less than 2% of the Holy Land's population, a number that is steadily decreasing as they are driven out by their increasingly radical Muslim neighbors. Thus, today the principal competing claims to the city come from Judaism and Islam. Let's examine these claims. Jerusalem has been the unambiguous center of Jewish religious and national life since it was founded by King David about 3,000 years ago. In 957 BCE, his son, King Solomon, built a temple on a raised area of the city as a permanent home for the Holy Ark of the Covenant. From the very day it was constructed, Jewish life revolved around the temple. The Sanhedrin Council, which governed the nation, was located on the temple grounds. The temple service was at the heart of the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur holy days. The temple was central to the three pilgrim festivals, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, when all Jews were required to gather in Jerusalem. And every 7 years all Jews were required to assemble at the temple to hear the king read from the Torah. This first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BCE, and the Jews were expelled to the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates, but they always longed for Jerusalem. A 2,500-year-old prayer of mourning survives from that time. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? If I forget you, Jerusalem, let my right hand lose its strength. Let my tongue cling to my palate if I fail to recall you, if I fail to elevate Jerusalem above my highest joy. The Jews returned a generation later and rebuilt a second temple, maintaining full or partial sovereignty over the land for another 6 centuries. In the 2nd century BCE, King Antiochus of Greek-ruled Syria attempted to Hellenize the region and impose the worship of Zeus at the temple. The 8-day festival of Hanukkah celebrates the rededication of the Second Temple after this desecration. The Romans finally destroyed the Second Temple in 70 CE with the intent of erasing the Jewish people from history. They renamed the territory Palestina, a reference to the Jews' biblical enemies, the Philistines, as a final insult. But there was always a Jewish presence in Israel, especially in the holy cities of Jerusalem, Hebron, Tiberias, and Sfat. Elderly Jews from all over the world would make pilgrimage to die and be buried in that sacred ground. In the Middle Ages, villages from Russia to Morocco would pool their money for years just to send one villager to Jerusalem to deliver their prayers to the Western Wall. 3 times every day, Jews face towards Jerusalem and pray for their return to the Holy City. After every meal, Jews pray that God will rebuild Jerusalem speedily in our days. The words, "next year in Jerusalem," are recited by every Jew at the end of the Passover Seder and at the end of the Yom Kippur fast. At Jewish weddings, a glass is broken in commemoration of the destruction of the temple. Several religious fast days, including the 9th of Av, recall the destruction of the temple. Jerusalem appears in the Hebrew Bible 669 times. O Jerusalem, the built-up Jerusalem is like a city that is united together. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. The builder of Jerusalem is God. The outcast of Israel he will gather in. Praise God, O Jerusalem. Laud your God, O Zion. Jerusalem also shows up in thousands of rabbinic writings. When one is praying in the land of Israel, he should direct his heart towards Jerusalem. If he is standing in Jerusalem, he should face towards the Holy Temple. All who pray in Jerusalem, it is as if he prayed before the throne of glory, because the gate of heaven is situated there. From the day Jerusalem was destroyed, God has no joy, until he rebuilds Jerusalem and returns Israel to it. In the words of its current mayor, Jerusalem represents the purest expression of all that Jews prayed for, dreamed of, cried for, and died for in the 2,000 years since the destruction of the Second Temple. And yet today, the central structures of Jerusalem are not Jewish. The skyline is dominated by the massive domes of 2 Islamic mosques. In founding a brand new monotheistic faith, Muhammad coveted the approval of the Jews and Christians for credibility reasons, especially the influential Jews of Medina. He made much noise about the conversion of a local Jew who took the name Abdullah ibn Salam, calling him a servant of God. In these early years he had his followers pray towards Jerusalem, in emulation of the Jews, but when the Jews at large ridiculed his new faith, he rejected Jerusalem, and for the past 1400 years Muslims have prayed toward Mecca. Consequently, Muslims in Jerusalem pray with their rear ends facing the Temple Mount. The traditional Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca duplicates the 3 annual Jewish pilgrimages to Jerusalem, the preparation for which Muhammad would have witnessed among Arabian Jews. Muhammad had personally conquered the entire Arabian Peninsula by the time of his death in 632. Only 6 years later, his successors seized Jerusalem, but the city was largely ignored by the Muslim conquerors for 60 years, until political expediency thrust it into the spotlight. During the reign of the Umayyad Caliph, Abd al-Malik, who ruled from Damascus, Syria, the people of what is today Iraq revolted against him and subsequently conquered the Hijaz, including the cities of Mecca and Medina. As a result, Syrian Muslims could no longer visit those cities. In order to maintain religious relevance, he provided his subjects with a substitute destination, by transforming Jerusalem into a center of pilgrimage. Keep in mind Jerusalem is not mentioned once in the Quran, so this was to be a difficult task. He rested his justification on a vague Quranic passage, Surah 17, verse 1. Glory to him who caused his servant to travel by night from the sacred mosque to the farthest mosque, whose precincts we have blessed, in order to show him some of our signs. He is indeed the all-hearing, the all-seeing. The imaginative Islamic scholars of the time declared that the sacred mosque was in Mecca, and the farthest mosque was in Jerusalem. The story goes that Muhammad was conveyed there one night in a dream, on the back of al-Barak, a magical horse with the head of a woman, wings of an eagle, the tail of a peacock, and hooves reaching to the horizon. He tethered the horse to the western wall of the Temple Mount, and from there ascended to the 7th heaven with the angel Gabriel. The Umayyad Caliph completed the Dome of the Rock in 691, built around the rock from which Muhammad is said to have risen to heaven. It was a blunt and concrete way of asserting Islam's dominance over the site. 14 years later, in 705, the adjacent Al-Aqsa Mosque was completed. Al-Aqsa means the farthest. The Caliph had retroactively created the farthest mosque referred to in the Quranic verse, and the co-option was complete. And so far, it has been permanent, despite the fact that a Jewish power technically holds political control of the Temple Mount. Here's why this story is critical to the counter-jihad today. The gradual Islamization of new territory and the co-option of its most important religious sites has been an essential feature of jihad since the time of Muhammad. The Kaaba stone in Mecca was a pagan site of worship before it was appropriated by Islam. The Umayyad Mosque in Damascus and the Great Mosque of Istanbul were erected on the sites of Christian Byzantine churches. And as I have explained, 2 grand mosques were positioned deliberately to eradicate the holiest site in Judaism, a co-option that has retroactively lent credibility to the Islamic claim to Jerusalem. These buildings provide the strongest ammunition to Islamists and leftist revisionists who maintain Islam's singular right to Jerusalem. Today, no one remembers that Damascus and Istanbul were Christian. If not for the modern Zionist movement, the Jewish connection to Jerusalem may have been completely obscured as well. If Islam sees fit to abort the entire history of a 3,000-year-old city, do you think they'd have any compunction about eclipsing cities and civilizations that are relatively young? Several years ago, plans were made to build a mega-mosque, possibly accommodating up to 70,000 worshippers, in time for the 2012 Olympics in London. The funding would have come from Tablighat Jama'at, a Muslim missionary sect with possible links to terrorism. If completed, it would be the largest mosque in Europe, and the largest house of worship in the UK. It would dwarf London's icons such as St. Paul's Cathedral and Westminster Abbey. Meanwhile, in Germany, the Religious Affairs Department of the Turkish government is funding a huge mosque project in Cologne. It would also hold thousands of worshippers and permanently alter the skyline of a great European city. It would rival the Cologne Cathedral, which was founded in the year 1248. When concerned Europeans gathered this September to protest this modification, they were brutally assaulted by throngs of so-called anti-fascist demonstrators, who were given cover and assistance by the city's own police department. In 100 years, will any Muslims concede that London was British? Perhaps there will be a tense standoff, as the city is divided between Islamic and secular blocs. Will Cologne be remembered as German? When mosques outnumber and outshine churches, the former Western character of the city will be consigned to the realm of memories. Will intellectuals in America argue over whether Paris belongs to the French? Might one be castigated as a neocon Frankist to support the construction of provocative ethnic French settlements in the suburbs of Paris, among established Muslim communities? These are the important questions that spring to mind when one contemplates the Muslim co-option of Jerusalem.